And so last week we started a new series called The Church Defined. As we ask this question, what does it actually mean to be the church? And if we're honest, these last couple years, things have shifted, things have changed, things have looked different. And for some of us, our kind of paradigm of what church actually is has completely shattered. We can't come, we can't gather the same ways. We have restrictions, and so we're asking this church, what does it mean to be the church? And more specifically, what is God asking us to be? Who is God asking us to be as a church in this community? We recognize, right, we're not the church in the community, right? We're not the only church in Kincardine. We're a church in the community. And what is God asking us to uniquely be? Who is God asking us to uniquely be? And this is the honest question we've been asking, because I believe more than ever we need clarity on that, don't we? Now more than ever, we really need to know why we as a church exist. We need God to direct our steps, not just once a week or not just once a year, but every day. We need His Word to be a light unto our path. We need His Spirit of God to guide us in everyday decisions, because we need God every day in our life. It's time more than ever to be the church that Jesus died for. And so with vision, I love vision, don't get me wrong, but more than what I love about vision is that it produces a sense of clarity, and I love clarity. I love to know what is expected of me. I love to know when I succeeded and when I fell short. I love to know where I was able to get it right. I want to know what is expected of me. I want to know where I'm walking. I want to know what step is next. I love clarity, because when I have clarity, and maybe you feel this too, you get a sense of confidence, don't you? You get a sense of confidence in your job. When you have a clear work description, if you're working a job, you have clarity on what is expected of you of that day, you have a confidence to go and attack that job. But when you have insecurity or a lack of clarity, you're not really sure, well, what am I supposed to do? And I believe the same is true with us as followers of Jesus. When we talk about the local church, when we have vision, when we have clarity, we have a sense of confidence in what we are called to do and who we are called to serve. We read in Proverbs 29 that says, if my people can't see what God is doing, if they can't see, another translation said, if they don't have a revelation, if they can't see what God is doing, what happens? They stumble all over themselves, right? They trip all over themselves. Another translation says they cast off restraint, or another translation even says they die, they perish, right? Hopelessness is overtaken in their heart. There's something inside of them dies. When you don't have a vision, when you can't see what God is doing, we stumble all over the place. But when we attend to what God reveals, when we attend to what He reveals, we are most blessed. And again, this word blessed doesn't just mean you're going to be rich or you're going to have a full health life. You're going to live this blessed life. What it means is this sense of contentment. It's this sense of completion, the sense of that you will experience joy, this wholeness, this sense of joy. And I don't know one person who doesn't want the sense of joy, this completion of joy, this feeling of contentment, this feeling of wholeness. We all desire that, don't we? We all want to live in that place. But how do we get that? How do we see that? How do we experience that? Well, David learned the lesson years and years and years ago, and he's teaching us, and he says, you, God, you will show me the way of life, or the pathway of life. Granting me, here's that word again, granting me joy of your presence. You see, here's the thing you need to know. If you want to experience a joyful life, if you want to be complete and whole, your spouse will not be able to grant you the joy you're looking for. Your parents, your father, your friend, your mother, your pastor, your community, these are all great things, but only the presence of God will illuminate your path and give you a direction for your life and grant you the joy that you and I so desperately long for. So what's the vision for our life? Is that we need to put Jesus first. The vision is that we need to seek after His presence. We need to seek after His person. We need to agree that we're not going to settle for anything less than what Jesus paid for, right? We're not going to settle for anything less than what Jesus paid for. We're committed to going after and receiving and experiencing all that Jesus died for, so we may have life, but not just life to the what? Life to the full. And that's what we are calling us to, and that's what the hope is that we are holding on to. And so as a community, as a church, as a leadership team over this last summer, we put together this mission statement or this vision statement that is going to drive everything we do, because we want people to experience all that God has for them. We want to have them a vision for their lives. And the vision for us is that we are going to lead people into an overflowing relationship with Jesus. So everything we do, everything we plan, everything we prepare, everything we invest our time, our talent, and our treasures into is going to, for the end of leading people into an overflowing relationship with Jesus. We're not a group who are leading policies. We're not a group who are leading politicians. We are leading people into an overflowing relationship with Jesus. And how many people know that in order for anything to overflow, what has to happen first? It needs to be filled, right? Individually. If I want Jesus to have impact in others through me, I first need to be filled with Jesus. I first need to know Jesus. I need to be about Jesus. I now allow Jesus to have my whole heart. And in doing so, position myself so that I can be full to the point of overflowing. This verse that Paul wrote to the church in Romans, or this prayer rather that Paul wrote to the church in Rome, is gripped my heart about a year ago, and I honestly believe this is the anchor verse that I believe is driving us, and I feel that we need to know and live in as a church in 15:13. May the God of hope fill you with all joy and peace as you trust in Him, so that you may what? Overflow with hope by the power of the Holy Spirit. See, they love this line, as you trust in Him. Because like with any relationship, trust is built over time, right? Trust is nurtured. Trust is the fruit of a relationship, a growing, maturing relationship. The more I grow in my relationship with someone, the more I can trust them, the more I can give them my heart. And this is what this relationship with Jesus is looking like. As we trust Him, as we grow in trust, as we build relationship, as we understand His Word, as He gets to know our heart and we get to know His heart, we build this level of trust to the point that it overflows. And I want that kind of relationship for you. I want you to have a relationship with Jesus that's not just surface or not just Sunday driven, but daily filling yourself to this place where you're growing in faith and knowledge and understanding and awareness of the person of Jesus, to the point that His relationship and all that He has for you overflows in your life. And practically speaking, this means as a church that everything we do is going to lead towards that goal. So we are going to invite you, and we invite everyone in our church to do 4 things. 4 things. This is what we do as a church. This is our strategy for leading you and leading us into this overflowing relationship. The first is we're going to experience life. We talked about that last Sunday. If you missed last Sunday, you can go online and you can watch that. But we want to invite you into this opportunity to experience life. And we experience life primarily in our gatherings, don't we? As we gather on Sunday. And the second thing we want to do is we want you to live in community. We believe that circles are better than rows, that we want to invite you to live in community through groups. And we're going to talk more about that today. And thirdly, we want you to discover your purpose. Who has God made you to be? The unique purpose, the unique design that God has etched into you and created you to be. We're going to do that through training. And the last thing we're going to do is we're going to call to make a difference. And we do that through our teams, because I believe ultimately that we are the church. And the church doesn't exist for me, but we are the church, and we exist for the world, right? We exist for our community, to make a difference, to make a Jesus-sized difference in our community. It was His last command, to go out into the world and make a difference, to make disciples. And so we want to partner with the mission of God, to embrace the mission, to make a difference in our community. Mark Twain, he says, the 2 most important days in your life are the day you were born and the day you find out why. And I believe that this is the journey we're on. This is the journey we're walking out as we discover who we are called to be as a church. And so just a quick recap before we jump into our new content for today is experience life. We talked about this last week, and we said what? Jesus changes everything. That's a statement I hold on to. It's a statement I lean on to. It's a statement I believe with my full heart, that Jesus is the one who changes everything. He's the one who heals a broken heart. He's the one who restores a broken marriage. He is the one who brings healing to our hearts and healing to our lives. He's the one who restored the relationship between the brokenness of man and the goodness of God. He is the one. He changes everything. I can't fulfill that. Your spouse can't fulfill that. Your parents, as great as they are, cannot fulfill that. Only Jesus. Jesus changes everyone. Anyone believe with that today? Agree, Jesus changes everything. And so because Jesus changes everything, we want people to experience Jesus. We want to experience the life that Jesus offers. And so we do that two ways. We do that by coming into this place on a Sunday morning and having a life-giving experience. We want to create a space on Sundays when we gather that you can experience a life-giving environment, that you can experience hope and joy and peace in this place. But more importantly, we want you to experience Jesus, who said, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. So we want you to come into this place on a Sunday, and we want you to experience joy in the community, but we want you to experience Jesus, the giver and the source of life. And how do we experience life? How do we experience Jesus? Well, we learned last week we need to know him, right? Remember that word we talked about, gnosko? That word to know him, not just know about him, but to know him personally, to know him intimately, to know him experientially. And so that's the first step of the journey. And the second step we're going to talk about today is living in community. So not only does Jesus change everything, but I personally believe that we are better together. We are better together. I believe there's strength in diversity, and I love that we are a group of different people from different generations, from different experiences, from different backgrounds, and together we can come into a place, a common place, and we can encourage one another and strengthen one another and grow together. I believe there is so much value in that, and I celebrate that together. I celebrate that we are better together. And all throughout Scriptures, we see that the system to find freedom, or the system to find healing over our hurts and our habits and our hang-ups, is relationships. This is the system that Jesus designed from the beginning when he created the local church, and he created community. He created the body of believers. Ironically, though, it's also relationships that cause the most hurts, habits, and hang-ups, isn't it? If we're honest with ourselves, most of the hurt in our life comes from relationships and broken trust and broken relationships. But either way, it's a system that God designed. It's a system that God saw as the best system for caring for people. James, the brother of Jesus. Come on. When you have the brother of Jesus, the brother of Messiah, he's speaking on behalf of his brother who is the Messiah. Think about growing up and your older brother is the Messiah. Think about that, how that just messes you up a little bit as a kid, right? But my brother, he's Jesus, and this is James. He's talking. He says, listen, confess your sins to each other, he says, and pray for each other so that you may be healed. Listen, he's not saying confess your sins to God. He's saying confess your sins to one another. Yes, there's an idea we need to confess our sins to God. That's part of the journey. But part of the healing process is also that you have to find somebody that you can talk to, somebody that you can connect with, somebody who knows your heart and you can be honest with. Now, you don't need everybody. This is not you don't need to start blurting out all your drama to everybody. Nobody, that's not healthy for you or healthy for anybody. But everybody needs somebody, right? Everybody needs somebody in my corner, someone I can rely on, someone I can lean on. And this is why living in community is so critical, because we all need someone to care for us. We all need somebody who's going to care for us, who's going to call us up and text us and just see how we are doing. We all need somebody in our life. But the flip side is that too, is we all need to care for someone. We all need someone that we are actually caring for and looking out after and praying for. You see, in order for the fruit of the Spirit to develop and be realized in our lives, it needs other. It needs somebody else. It needs a recipient, right? How can love, joy, peace, patience, goodness, gentleness, self-control, how can these things grow in us if we have no one to deposit them into? Gentleness needs someone that I can bestow gentleness. So I need kindness. I need someone that I can be kind to. Love needs someone that I can love. In order for that to grow and mature to its fullest potential, it needs to be grown and thrived in community. And so this is why Jesus created the body of church, the body of believers, the church, because he recognized that is how we grow together. It's not just about experiencing him personally. That's the first step, but it's also experiencing him corporately and caring for one another corporately. There's a story in Judges 18 we're going to talk about a little bit this morning. And I remember reading it several years ago, and it just kind of struck me. And I just thought about it. I think this would be a great example as we talk about community and why it's so important to have people in our corner. We all need people. And in Judges 18, we pick up the story, and it says, now in those days, Israel had no king. And so if we go back to Proverbs, we realize that Israel they couldn't see what God was doing. They were stumbling all over the place. And if you read Judges, that's a pretty good example of what Israel is doing. It's stumbling all over the place. It's just tripping all over itself. It had no vision. They weren't a nation really yet. They were just a bunch of tribes trying to do their own thing. And Israel had no king. They weren't a nation yet. They were just sort of tribes and people. And so they had no king. And the tribe of Dan was trying to find a place where they could settle. For they had not moved into the land assigned to them, the land that was divided among the tribes of Israel. And so the men of Dan chose from their clans 5 capable warriors to scout out the land and to settle in. So again, for those who don't know what's happening in the story, the Israelites have now been freed from Egypt. They're no longer slaves in Egypt. Moses had led them out. He's now dead. Joshua led them into the promised land. He's now dead. Now they're in the promised land, but they haven't yet received the inherited divide of the land for each one of the 12 tribes. So the Danites, because they haven't been given what they are owed, are looking for a place to settle. They're looking for a place to call their own. And because they have no king, because there's no one to appoint them, they're just going to take it upon themselves to figure it out. They're going to take it upon themselves to find where we are going to live. And yeah, they had prophets, and yes, they had judges that represented God, but the tribal leaders really just sort of did what they thought best for their people. And if you read through the story of Judges, it didn't always work out. Actually, for the most part, you see this phrase over and over again. And the Israelites did evil in the eyes of the Lord. Again, the Israelites did evil in the eyes of the Lord. Like they were just struggling. And they were stumbling all over the place. That's really the only way to describe it. So here at Dan, they're trying to find a place to live. And so they send out 5 capable warriors to go and scout out, figure out where we can call, where can we land, where can we plant our life. And so this is where we pick up the story in verse 7. And so these 5 men left, and they came to Laish, where they saw a people that were living in safety, like the Sidonians, unsuspecting and secure. Another translation says peaceful and secure. And since their land lacked nothing, they were prosperous. They had everything they ever needed. And they lived a long way from the Sidonians and had no relationship with anyone else. So they had a relationship with the Sidonians, but the Sidonians lived a far way away, and they had no relationship with anyone else. Now, if you look at the map of Israel, Israel's kind of like kind of tall and skinny. So we're talking now northern Israel. Sidon and Tyre are 2 cities, coastal cities, right on the Mediterranean there. And Laish is inland, okay? So inland, far away. Now, the relationship between the 3, Sidon and Tyre were really wealthy, prosperous cities. They are the ones who developed the color purple, the dye. And so they had all this wealth associated with riches and royalty. And so the people of Laish had relationship with them, but they were really far away, right? We know what that's like. If you lived across the country, we have people, you have friends, and they're great people. They're some of our bestest friends, but they live really far away. And so when we're in crisis today, their hearts are with us, but their hands aren't there, right? Like sometimes I like your heart, I thank you for your prayers, but I could really use your hands and feet right now, and you're far away. And so that's kind of where the people of Laish lived. And so these people were not bad people. They were peaceful people. They were good people. They from an outside, they had everything they could ever want. They had riches. They had fertile soil. They were comfortable. They were successful. And from all vantage points, they had everything they ever could need. The Bible actually says, the story says they lacked nothing, right? They lacked nothing. But these 5 warriors, when they were scouting out the land, they saw one chink in the chain. They saw one gap in the armor, and the gap was that they didn't have any allies. They had no one to come to their rescue. They were sitting ducks. They were peaceful. They were secure. They were unsuspecting, and they recognized that we could take them because we don't have to fight just their army. We don't have to fight another army. We could just fight their army, whatever they have protecting their city. And so, as we pick up in chapter 11, it says, in 600 men from the clan of Danites, armed for battle, set out, and they attacked them with sword and burned down the city, and there was no one to rescue them because they lived a long way away from Sidon and had no relationship with anyone else. That line throughout this whole chapter comes up. They had no relationship with anyone else. They had no relationship. They had no relationship. They had no allies. And it's just like a sounding horn that just is asking me the question, like, who am I in relationship with? Am I like them? Am I unsuspecting? Am I living this peaceful, calm, have everything figured out, have everything I ever need? I have my wealth, I have my health, I have my family, we're good. Right? But do I have relationship? You see, when you look about this story, so we're in Judges 18. So if you rewind to Judges 6, there's a story of Gideon. And Gideon was the least of his clan, right? The least of his family, the least of his clan. And God had called Gideon to be a judge, to defend the Israelites against the Midianites. And the Midianites were this oppressive people. They had an army of 100,000 plus, if you remember the story. 100,000 plus, and God calls Gideon to lead an army to attack the Midianites, and he starts with an army of 30,000, and God whittles them all down to an army of 300, which seems impossible, right? The odds seem impossible. But God, through his power, uses the army of 300 to conquer the army of 100,000 plus. And so we read that story like 300. That's not even an army. That's like an entourage. That's like a little combat group or special units force. And so when we read that, understanding that number, and we look at the 600, we realize this is a small army. This isn't an elaborate army in the scope of what armies are. This isn't a big threat. This is a small threat. The potential of a community who is in relationship, who is prepared to defend themselves, who have allies close by. This is something that we can easily conquer, yet an army of 600 were able to take out a community that had everything it ever needed. Now, I've realized in this that when you're vulnerable, when you're alone rather, you are vulnerable, right? When you're alone, you're vulnerable. When you don't have anybody in your corner, you are vulnerable. And the enemy sees that. And Peter, he tells us in New Testament, Peter says, stay alert. Be on guard, another translation says. Be on guard. Watch out for your great enemy, the devil. For he prowls around like a roaring lion, looking for someone to devour. Now, I've watched enough Animal Kingdom to know that a lion does not attack an animal in the middle of a pack, right? A lion does not attack an animal that is safely secure around others. What's it looking for? It's looking for the one who's isolated. It's looking for the one who's alone. It's looking for the one who's drifting back, who's falling behind. It's looking for the one who is maybe sick or ill. It's looking for the one that is alone. It's looking for the one that is vulnerable, and very much so, like Peter is saying, listen, the enemy, or the devil, he is like that. He's not going to go after those who are in the middle of group, who are living in community, who are surrounded in relationship, who have allies on every side. No, he's going to find those people who are isolated, who are alone, who are separated, who are unsuspecting, who think, hey, we got it all figured out. We're all good. Everything's good. Everything's gravy. He's going to look for those people. And he attacks with the seemingly insignificant things, but because we're all alone, it takes us out. This seemingly small problem can destroy us and cripple us and take us out of the game when we don't have anybody else who can help us give a better perspective or a clearer image on what is going on when we have no allies to come to our aid. And can I be real for a moment? If you allow me to be a little more direct, is that COVID, these past year and a half, has really trained us to live in isolation, hasn't it? It's been training us to be alone, and to not only be alone, but to find comfort in that, to find comfort in being alone. We've kind of convinced ourselves that it's the safe thing to do, it's the smart thing to do, it's the mature thing to do, is to stay home and stay safe. It's the language you're hearing, and while we want to honor public health and all that, I'm not going against that, but what I'm saying, though, is that in the isolation, we are separating ourselves from community and potentially putting ourselves in a place that is vulnerable. Putting ourselves in a place that the enemy can walk around and he's looking to devour. He's looking to take us out. He's looking to take out our heart and separate us from community. See, I've realized that the more you miss people, the less you miss people. Anyone feel that? The more you miss people, the more you do it, the more often you do it, then the less you actually do it. You actually find comfort in being alone. You actually, the thought of getting dressed and going out and hanging out with friends, or the thought of coming to church and actually having to I got a shower on Sunday morning? Man. I'm not the only one who feels that, right? You're so used to watching it on, you're like, man, I was just looking forward to having breakfast in my pajamas and just watching it all night. Now I have a shower, I got to get up, I got to go see people, it means I got to brush my teeth, all of these things. Or even throughout the week, you want to get together with friends, but you're like, oh, it just feels like such a burden. Things that you do all the time normally, but we just sort of trained ourselves to live in isolation. And the more we've been doing it, the longer we've been doing it, the less we miss it, the less we miss people, the less we miss community. And And I believe that is a sign that we're just being pulled away. We're not living in community. We need one another. You see, the people of Laish, if we can learn from this story of the people of Laish who had everything. They had finances, they had security, they had a land that was producing crops. They had everything they needed, but they lacked the one thing. And the one thing they lacked was their demise. The one thing they lacked what led to the end. What was it? They had no relationship. And so if there's one thing you can remember here today, this is my one-point message, is that your greatest resources are in your relationships. Your greatest resources today are not in your finances. It's not in your job. It's not in your government. It's not in me as a pastor. It's in your relationships with one another. It's the people you have in your corner who are going to stand by you and encourage you and pray for you and come to your aid in seasons where you are being attacked. When you're facing trials, when you're facing hardships, when you're having a tough day, when you can't see clearly through the fog and through the haze and through the chaos that's in front of us, you need those people who are going to come to your aid. You need relationships because there are days when you need somebody. There are days when you need other people, right? There are days that's going to come. If you haven't experienced it, it's coming. Be ready, it's coming. There's going to be days where you need other people. But can I tell you the other side of it? There's also going to be days where other people need you. There's going to be days where people need you. They're going to need you to come to their aid. They're going to need you to stand with them, to fight with them, to pray with them, and to pray for them. Everybody needs somebody. The Christian walk was never intended to be experienced in isolation. Instead, it was intended to be experienced in community of fellow believers engaged in a passionate pursuit of Jesus. That's what we were designed for. It was never an isolation. It's not a solo game. This is a team sport, friends. Okay? The team sport, everyone's on deck. There's no bench players. We're all on the field. We're all in this together. It's chaos, but it's awesome. Right? It's good chaos. As long as we know where we're going, as long as we have vision, as long as we have clarity, as we get a sense of confidence, and we can experience life, and we can live in community. Chuck Colson in his book Being the Body, he writes, many Christians have been infected with the most virulent virus of modern American life. What sociologist Robert Bella calls radical individualism. They concentrate on personal obedience to Christ as if all that matters is Jesus and me. It's all that matters. But in doing so, miss the point altogether. For Christianity is not a solitary belief system, as any genuine resurgence of Christianity, as history demonstrates, depends on the reawakening and the renewal of that which is the essence of the faith. That is the body of God, the people of God, the new society, the body of Christ, which is made manifest in the world through the local church. And as I read this quote, when this is a book from early 2000s, and I read this book, I realized this still rings true, especially after the season we found ourselves in, that we've convinced ourselves that all we need is just as long as Jesus and I are good, then that's good. My faith is all just about Jesus and me. But that's only one part of the equation. Jesus and you, yes, that relationship is critical, but you also need relationship with others. You need living in community. That is an essential part of growing and maturing in our faith. Not just for us, but for our friends and for those around us. They need you. We are better together. So don't do life alone. Don't walk out your journey alone. Find somebody that you can live in community with. So your greatest resources are in your relationships. Your greatest resources are in your relationships. As we think about small groups, as we think about community, we're always drawn, at least I am, drawn to this chapter in Acts 2, and where it just kind of talks about this utopian, perfect community. And as you read it, you're like, I desire to be part of a community like that. Where it read, like, and every day they continue to meet together in the temple courts. They broke bread in their homes, and they ate together with glad and sincere hearts. And they praised God, enjoying the favor of all the people. And the Lord added to their number daily those who were being saved. And there's this beautiful picture of the church this first century church, as they were living together, as they were serving one another, as they were being in community with one another, and having meals with one another, and talking about Jesus together. And in this process, they were finding favor with one another, and God was blessing them with more people coming into relationship with Jesus. This is this beautiful picture of what the church could be. And sometimes we think, well, that was then. This is now. But this is the church that you and I could be part of if we choose to live in community. See, I believe that circles are better than rows, and therefore everything we do should encourage people to live in these life-giving communities where they can do life together, they can celebrate victories and battle difficulties hand in hand. And because we believe this, and we believe life change happens in the context of authentic relationships, it's our desire as a church, it's my desire, it's our desire as a leadership team to create groups where people can grow together, where we can worship in the temple, but ministry happens, personal ministry happens, personal care happens, home to home. And so, as a church, we're committed to living in community, and what that looks like practically is really small groups, or life groups. We use that term, life groups. It's a small group of people who are caring for one another, who are committed to serving one another, supporting one another, who know each other's name, who see each other and miss each other and pray for one another. Groups of 12, groups of 4 to 12 people. We also have these mid-sized groups. These are like our youth groups or our seniors groups. These are a little bit larger than 12 people, but they're groups of people who care for one another. They know each other's names. They're missing each other. They're calling each other. They're seeing how each other's doing. We also have teams. And teams are our way of growing. And I know for me, as a guy, sometimes I get to know guys better, and I feel like I'm in community when we're doing something together, when we're serving together, when we're working towards a common project, when we're talking and in our discussions, we get to know one another. So we want you to be involved in team. And this idea of living in community is not just for you, but it's also about those in the group, that they may experience joy, hope, and peace. And I believe, really quickly, a group provides three things. This is why we're going to push it. This is why we're going to walk down this road. I believe it's a place to encourage one another. It's a place to encourage one another because you need dialogue. You need to look into each other's eyes. You need to be able to see each other. It's a place to encourage one another. The author of Hebrews tells us not to let us think of ways, rather, to motivate one another to acts of love and good works. And let us not neglect our meeting together, as some in the habit of doing, but encourage one another, especially now in the days of his returning is drawing near. Listen, we need to find ways to motivate one another. Sometimes I need a little motivation in my relationship with Jesus. Sometimes I need a little encouragement along the way because sometimes I just don't feel like it. Anyone else like that? You're just like, I know I should. I just don't feel like it. I don't feel like putting Jesus first today. I want to put me first today because I deserve it, right? I don't want to go to church. I don't want to read my Bible. I don't want to do what's right. I just, so we need to motivate, encourage one another. We all need that. We all need those moments. Let's be honest, right? Not every day is roses and gravy. Some days are hard. Some days you got to work through some stuff. Second thing we need to do is we need a place to support one another and care for one another. John tells us that we know what real love is because Jesus gave up his life for us. So we also ought to give up our lives for our brothers and sisters. Listen, people around us need us. And Jesus gave up his life for us. He showed us what love looks like. And so now we also allow his love to overflow in us and care for and support one another. We all need that. And the thirdly is it's a place to grow together. Proverbs tells us that it's as iron sharpens iron, so a friend sharpens a friend. And this is where diversity of thought and experience and perspective actually makes us stronger if we embrace it, right? If we allow people's perspectives, we allow people through their experience and through their wisdom challenge us and shape us, we can actually become better. So it's a place to encourage one another, support, and a place to grow together. And this is the value of groups. And this is what I'm inviting all of us to be part of, to be in community, to not just experience life on Sundays. And I'm glad you're here. And we're going to continue to make this a better place that you can come and experience the hope, the joy, and the peace and the life of Jesus. But we also want you to take that other step and begin living in community with someone else. I'm going to invite the band back. See, the reality is, and here's the thing I need you know and I know, is that sometimes though we value relationships, as we said at the beginning, we've been hurt by people. Maybe you've taken a step and you've opened yourself up to somebody, and that someone has betrayed you, or they've taken advantage of your trust, and they've maybe said something that you said in confidence, and they shared it with somebody else, and that has broken your heart, and you said, well, man, I'm not doing it again. And here's the reality we need to know is that groups will never, ever replace the person of Jesus, right? They can never hold the weight that Jesus can carry. They'll never be perfect. Hurts will happen. People will hurt you. People will hurt me. I hate to say it, that I'll probably hurt you at times, and I don't mean to. But it happens because we're human, we're flawed, we're broken, and in our attempts to be like Jesus, sometimes we make bad decisions. Sometimes we act out of selfish ambition, right? Sometimes it happens. But all that does is just state our need for Jesus so much more. Our weaknesses and failures, our inadequacies are not an excuse for why community isn't important, but a constant reminder of why it is critical. We won't allow where we all fall short to be the defining reason to give up on community. Instead, it'll remind us how much of our need for Jesus at all times. So we invite Jesus into our community. It's not just community for community's sake. It's not just friends for hangout's sake. But it's friends for Jesus' sake. Speaking life and encouragement and prayer and seeing the best of Jesus in and through all of us. So your greatest resources are in your relationship. So here's the question I want to ask you is who are you in your relationship with? Who can you call when things are tough? Who can call you when things are tough? Have you positioned yourself to be available to somebody? Or are you always looking for someone to be available to you? Right? Relationship is two ways. So your greatest resources, my greatest resources are in our relationship. So who can you turn to? And who can turn to you? And so as we journey together, I'm not telling you that we have this all figured out. I'm not telling you that we have every T dot and every I crossed, or I dotted and every T, you know what I mean, that one. But we're committed to the journey. We're committed to working this out together. We're committed to living in community where everyone is known by somebody, where everybody has somebody. And so, again, I'm new. I'm still working a lot of things out. And I'm getting to know where we were before everything kind of shifted and changed. But if you're here this morning, you say, listen, I have led a life group, and I would love to lead a life group again. I just need some direction. If that's you, can you just fill out a connection card, and on the back, just give me a little bit of heads up, and can you just give this to me at the end of the service? Because I want to contact you. I'm still just trying to figure things out. And if you want to look at leading a life group in your community, in your area, or maybe it's a Bible study or a shared interest group, let me know. We could talk about it. Or maybe you're here to say, listen, I just need to be in community. I need to be in community. I'm looking for a life group. You can also fill this out and let us know. We will do our best to connect you into a life-giving community. We have a few of them that are starting in this month. We have a few that we're starting in the fall that we're working towards for men in the fall. And so we're working through some stuff, but we love your feedback. And so if you would like that, let us know. And we will serve you as best as we can as we grow together, as we lead each other into an overflowing relationship with Jesus. You with me? You with me? Let's stand to your feet. Be prepared to close. And Ashley and the band are just going to lead us in a song. And it's really just a song of prayer. Is that we would build our life on Jesus. That we position ourselves to be used by God to serve one another. That we build our life anchored on Him. And that's my prayer. That's what I pray every day. God, use me. I want to build my life on your firm foundation. But help me see others around me and to love others around me the way you love us. Let's pray this is our prayer.